Hey friends, it's been a while, but I'm back for another couple of weeks, maybe. We'll see. It's been a crazy year. I think I said that last time, but hey, it's worth saying again. I can't do home remodeling anymore. My wife has grounded me from that. So anyway, I have my friend Tim Durling here for I believe the third time, either third or fourth. He's been here quite a bit, and today he's going to talk about on the record, the April Wine album review. How you doing, Tim?
I'm doing good, Alan. Thanks for having me back. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. I think the last time we talked about Fleetwood Mac.
That sounds right. Yeah, so
Yeah.
maybe it was this book right here.
Yeah. Yeah. So
So
yeah. So
yeah,
this is the latest one, my seventh. And yeah, really happy with that. Came out. It's taken me 7 books to get around to writing about a Canadian band. Because
that's very un-Canadian of you, isn't
it
it?
very is very yeah. Yeah.
So what was the inspiration for this book? And what was my other question? When did you decide to write it?
So it's been, I think, looking back in my emails, because this book is like a lot of my previous books where they're kind of modeled after Martin Popoff's album by album series, where he gets a lot of people contributing and answering a bunch of the same questions about a band's albums, a band's discography. So when I was checking when I started emailing people about this, it was March of 2025. So it was quite a while ago because these kind of books take a lot longer than like the Fleetwood Mac one I wrote myself. So it doesn't take quite as long. So it's been a while in the making. As far as the inspiration, I think I kind of figured I would get to this band eventually. They've been a favorite of mine for a long time, and there's also a not a personal connection, but a geographical connection because April Wine started in kind of my neck of the woods, the maritime provinces, the easternmost part of Canada, and there aren't a lot of bands that came out of this area of this part of Canada that made a mark worldwide, and April Wine is one of the very few. So it's pretty cool that I was able to do this. And like I've said it for a lot of my other books, if there'd been another book like this on April Wine, I would have just simply bought it as a fan. But I didn't see anything out there in the marketplace that talked about each of their albums. They've got 16 studio albums, and I don't think a lot of people realize uh, they've got that many albums out there.
There are quite a few bands that, once they got past their I guess you would call it their classic hits or whatever. People kind of drop off on them after a while because, these are the 10 songs that I know.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And in the case of April Wine, I mean, their first album came out in 1971, but they really didn't break big on an international level until 1978. So there's about five, six, seven albums, 6 albums or so that most people aren't as familiar with outside of Canada. And then, like you said, after they sort of had their peak, of popularity into the early to mid 80s, um, they kind of drop off. They're not the radio favorites anymore. You're not reading about them in rock magazines or anything like that. So yeah, there's a lot of reasons why that happens, but up here in Canada, of course, they're better known. They're more of, kind of a classic rock institution up here. And I know they had their moments, that around the turn of the 80s, they did very well in the States and in other parts of the world. But yeah, I just thought this was a band. I knew, there were a lot of people that I've interviewed, and there's a lot of people that I've talked to on, the Contrarians and other shows that like this band. So I knew that there was an audience for this, and especially here in Canada, there was an audience for people to say, hey, oh, somebody wrote a book about April Wine.
So you kind of touched on it a little bit from the start or from the idea to the finished product. About how long did that take you?
So once I got everybody's content, it's a fairly quick process. So in between me starting this book, I started and finished the Fleetwood Mac book. Then I went back to the April Wine book, and my good buddy Matt Phillips is the guy that helps lay out the books and design them and design the covers and all of that. Um, Once that started, I didn't really measure it in terms of hours, but probably if I was to boil it down to, and it might have been 3 or 4 months of putting it together. It was at this point, like I said, it's my seventh book, unbelievably, and I'd like to think I'm getting a little bit more efficient at this because kind of know what to do now because this so far the books that I've done, other than my 8-track book, have been sort of they've either been these panel discussion books where I've got a lot of people contributing, or they've been like my Sammy Haggard, my Fleetwood Mac book, where I've written them myself. I like both formats, but I always knew that I wanted this one to be opened up to other people. So yeah, a matter of months. It wasn't a it wasn't a really long, protracted process.
Very cool. What was the most difficult part of this project for you?
People have asked me that, and in all honesty, I don't remember coming across any real snags this time, anything that held me up. Um, I had an idea in mind of what I wanted to do, and people were cool about getting back to me about it. Um, yeah, I don't remember there being anything that I don't remember any stumbling blocks along the way. It was like, boy, has this book kind of come out? No, it kind of went pretty smooth this time around. Um, Unless I've blocked it out of my mind, but I can't remember anything where it's like, oh, I don't know if this is going to work. But no, I don't remember any moments where it was like, boy, is this book ever going to come out? So no, this one, knock on wood, it came fairly easily.
Very cool. Did you have any graphics or any content in the book that had to be licensed separately?
So yes, so we had to license this front cover from LME, which we've used before, and also this back cover shot of the late Miles Goodwin. Um, we licensed that from a photographer who's also in the area named, I'm probably going to mess up his name, but I think it's Alan Zukowski. He's in the Atlantic region of Canada. He covers a lot of concerts and he's a great photographer. So I wanted a classic photo with the best known lineup. This is from the late 70s, and then I wanted something a little bit more recent. So I think this photo was taken. Uh, Boy, I want to say, see, Miles died in 2023, so this was probably taken 2019, something like that. So it's fairly recent.
Very
Other than
cool.
that, all of the pictures that are most all the pictures are in this book came from my own collection, except for one really cool one. Our mutual friend Martin Popoff. Not only did he write the foreword to this book for me, but he also contributed this because it's part of the story that he tells. Uh, doesn't show up that great, but what it is, it's a 74 tour poster, and part of his story was he and his buddies found a box full of these April Wine tour posters, and they were having a dance at somebody's house, and they just plastered the rec room downstairs in these April Wine posters.
You know, it has always been sort of a fantasy of mine to, you know, go to a yard sale and somebody have something like that and don't really know what they've got, or they don't care that they've got it and they just want it gone, and just
Yep.
find something like that that somebody would appreciate
I,
and
I
be able to share it with the world.
I think about that all the time when it comes to, as I've discussed with you before, my obsession with finding these rare 8 tracks that came out in the later 80s through the record clubs. To find somebody who had a relative that had a box of them upstairs, they have no idea what they're worth. Like they could be, titles that sell for hundreds of dollars on eBay, and here's a box of 8 tracks, just take them. There's no value in them. I
Right,
always think I always think how cool would it be to come across something like that, and uh, but yeah, no, it's a cool story because it would be the kind of thing that you'd remember. Something like that would stick out.
right. Um, there is a about 30 minutes away from here or so, there's a little sports arena in Owensboro, Kentucky that when Kiss was up and coming, they played in, and a friend of mine scored a poster from that,
Oh,
and I was like, dude, if you ever decide to put me in your will, that is what I want. Because
I'm s-
I don't collect a lot of stuff like that, but something like that, I would make an exception, and it would be on my wall behind me if I
I
ever
admit,
if I ever paint it. That's why I have my little background here.
if John Five ever found out about that, he'd probably offer him big bucks for it. He's the
Yeah.
biggest Kiss collector I know.
Yeah, I met John Five. He's a really, really nice guy.
That's what I've heard. Yeah, and
Yes, he.
he's got like a Kiss museum.
Yeah,
But
I would probably give somebody's arm to go see
yeah,
that.
it'd be a lot of fun. Yeah.
Okay. You said that I'm sure, like every other classic band, there have been quite a few member changes and lineups and stuff like that. Is there a particular era of April Wine that was your favorite?
Well, I think that it's pretty natural for people to have a soft spot for the moment that they got into a band.
Hmm.
And for me, I was kind of a latecomer with April Wine. I didn't really get into them until about 93 when a friend of mine lent me a couple of their CDs. One was their then current album, and one was a compilation called All the Rockers, which is just kind of like what it sounds like. It's kind of got all their heavy songs on one CD. And that was kind of the one-two punch that did it. It was a combination of a really strong new album, which was called Attitude, and then some other like songs that I had heard before, like Roller and I Like to Rock, but hadn't heard them in a long, long time and got them all in one place. So at that time, the band was, let me see now. So this lineup here, this is the best known lineup of April Wine. So you got Jerry Mercer on drums, Brian Greenway on guitar, Gary Moffat on guitar, Steve Lang on bass, Miles Goodwin on guitar and vocals. Miles sadly passed away, as did Steve Lang. Um, Gary Moffat left the band years ago. Jerry retired. Brian Greenway is the only, he's not even an original member, but he leads the current version of the band. But it was three-fifths of this lineup. So it was Miles, Brian, Jerry, and their bassist that preceded Steve Lang, a guy named Jim Clench, and another guitar player named Steve Siegel. Not Seagal, Siegel. There's a difference. So they were a five-piece lineup, three guitars, and that's the lineup that I saw when I first got into them, and I saw them for the first time in 1994. So that's probably my favorite April Wine lineup, but there've been lots of great ones.
Very cool. Um, for someone who is unfamiliar with April Wine, other than, Roller, Sign of the Gypsy Queen, the stuff that everybody knows, what would you suggest to them as a nice April Wine deep cut?
Oh wow. You know, I'm gonna say somebody asked me this earlier, and I'm gonna go with the song from 1994 from an album called Frigate, which they was the second album of the reunited lineup, and that was actually the tour that I saw them on. There's a song on there called "Driving with My Eyes Closed," which has always been a favorite. It was a single. It got a little bit of radio play up here, but obviously wasn't a big hit. But I would say check that song out. That's a really, really good one. And if anybody's interested in April Wine, I would suggest that All the Rockers CD I mentioned, if you can find that online. And then there's another one it's just called The Hits. So if you get the hits and all the rockers and listen to those and you don't like any of the songs, you probably don't like April Wine. But those would be the good I know that, in the US it's a different thing because I think a lot of people think they had four or five records. At the turn of the 80s. But yeah, like I said, 16 studio albums spread out over the years. So, but yeah, if you're, and that's the thing about these books. They show you each album, all the songs on them. So if you know one song, you say, oh, it's from this album, and then maybe you look at it, and go, hey, that song title sounds familiar too. But yeah, most people stateside would know First Glance, which had Roller, Harder Faster, which had I Like to Rock. It had their version of 21st Century Schizoid Man. And then their biggest album, the only platinum album they had in the US, Nature of the Beast, which had Sign of the Gypsy Queen and Just Between You and Me. That was their commercial peak in the US.
Right. I'm pretty sure the one that I have is the hits because it had all of those songs on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, is there anything you want to mention that we didn't cover?
Well, I appreciate the chance to plug the books, but yeah, all my books are available on Amazon, and yeah, if you've ever had an interest in this band, I think you'd be surprised by how eclectic some of their early albums are and how much variety there is across the catalog. Because April Wine, if people know it, they're kind of a three-chord rock band bordering on hard rock. They certainly have their hard rock moments, but they were just a good, solid rock band. But within that, there was a little bit of variety. Miles Goodwin was a very, very talented songwriter. He could write great piano ballads. He could write guitar ballads. He could write heavy rockers. He could write fast songs. He could write, bluesy stuff. There's a lot to dig into with this band, and I think that if people check it out, they'll find out that number one, they might recognize more songs than they think. Number two, they might end up even the stuff they hadn't heard before end up really liking it.
Very cool. Well, I'm going to switch it up on you here. We're going to step away from April wine for a minute.
All right.
As a book author, do you have any advice for somebody who wants to write a book? What some of the do's and the don'ts may be as an independent writer?
Well, I've been incredibly fortunate in my my sort of journey doing this because like I said, I've got 7 books and it hasn't even been 5 years that I've been working at this, which is it's pretty crazy. I mentioned my friend Matt Phillips before, who is a designer by trade. That's what he does for a living. And these books wouldn't exist without his expertise. He's the guy. I submit the Microsoft Word docs to him, and he brings it alive with the just the right fonts and the right layout, and laying out the pictures and stuff. And I've also got to mention a good friend of mine named Bug Campbell who proofreads. You've got to proofread. Do not. And I guess the biggest advice I would say, don't try and proofread yourself.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, because I've tried it and I've said this many, many times, but it's true. I believe it. If you've written something in your mind, you know what you meant to say. So that's what you're going to see. You're not going to see an obvious spelling error or a grammar error or something that says don't where it's supposed to say do. Get someone else, get another set of eyes on it, get somebody that's going to go through it line by line and not only make sure everything's spelled correct, make sure everything is, the grammar's correct. Say, does this make sense? Does this make sense to a casual reader? Is there something in there that you've got? I don't want this to be over anybody's heads. I don't want there to be, in jokes in here that only a diehard fan would know. There's a few little Easter eggs in there, but it doesn't matter. You're not losing anything if you don't get them. But things like when you're talking about when you've got a bunch of different people answering questions, let's say they're talking about the album Nature of the Beast. You don't want it to say, well, the Nature of the Beast sounds like this, because my favorite song on Nature of the Beast, and I think when the Nature of the Beast came out, okay, switch it up once in a while. The album. Say the album once in a while. This album, that album. Or if it says this album, that album too many times, put the title in once in a while. Make sure people stay involved, like, because there's some of the questions I'll ask or the statements, there'll be like 6 or 7 responses and it might take up 2 pages, and you're like, well, wait a minute, I don't want people to lose it and go, what are they even talking about now? So
Yeah,
you have to keep people involved, and that takes someone other. Now there's probably maybe people that are smarter than me could do that. I can't, but I would say don't proofread yourself, but make sure somebody does, because you can put all the hard work into a book, but I'm telling you right now, if there's a bunch of errors in it, that's all people are going to think. That's going to take them right out of it, and they're going to be like, "Wow, this is sloppy," and that's a shame because it's hard work putting these things together, and but that's the finishing touches that mean everything. As far as the finished product, you want it to be as correct as possible.
very good. Well, I appreciate you giving that advice to me and my friends. So, where can my friends find you online?
So I've actually got a link tree. So if anybody just goes to timsvinylconfessions.com, that takes you to my link tree. And then that'll send you to YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. It'll link to all of my books, anything that I've got, any kind of social media presence. So timsvinylconfessions.com. It's not a website per se, but I'm renting the URL, as it were. But Linktree does a good job of here's where you can find me.
Right. Well, Tim, I thank you for your time, and I look forward to talking to you when your next book is ready.
I'm working on them, but so thank you very much, Alan. I appreciate the time.
All right, take care.
See you later.
Thanks for listening to Big Al's Rockin' Podcast. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to subscribe on your preferred podcast outlet. Visit BigAlRocks.com to find past episodes, on-demand links to my radio show, links to my social media, and other Big Al shenanigans. Most importantly, please like and share this episode. Peace out.